thank you for agreeing to do this interview with me. And we kind of talked about maybe we would talk about a hobby that you have. Is that still okay?
That's great. Yeah.
Okay, what would you say is your favorite hobby?
I think one of my favorite hobbies is it's scuba diving, but specifically underwater cave diving.
And what exactly is cave diving?
Okay, you're familiar with maybe spelunking. It's above ground without, it's exploring caves that are dry, that you can actually walk into, that are above ground. These are underwater.
Okay. So where do you do that around here?
No, you can't. There's not any flooded cave systems in Indiana, but north central Florida is some of the most commonly dived caves in the world. Yes.
So you have to do some traveling to do this hobby.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
How did you develop the desire to do this?
Well, I've been a scuba diving instructor for about 7 years, and the group of people that I teach with, the owner of the dive store is a cave diving instructor, and he would show me videos and some of my classes videos, and it was appealing as an alternative to enjoy the sport that I love so much.
So you must be pretty good at this then to be able to teach others.
Well, I'd like to think that I'm above average, because it is a sport that has a lot of risk, because there are differences than just normal open water scuba diving that you have to experience and train for, and you have to do some intense training to be qualified to cave dive in various places around the world. So
basically you met this man and he taught you about it, and you took to it and you loved it, so you went on to teach other people about it.
Right, yeah. I think it's more for me, teaching just open water scuba diving. This is my passion. It's my side passion. So I don't instruct in it. I just enjoy it. It becomes my hobby. That's one of my favorites.
Awesome. So tell me about a specific trip, a cave diving trip that you went on.
Okay. In north central Florida, about 80 miles south of Macon, Georgia. Okay, as you're coming through the middle of Georgia, there's small rural north central Florida communities. So they're rural communities, probably an hour and a half from Pensacola, Florida, which is on the Gulf Coast. Well, anyway, throughout the area is the Swanee River. Okay, and these underwater cave systems actually provide water to the river, so they're underwater rivers is what they are. So you're able to explore them. The difference in cave diving versus other types of scuba diving is that there is no direct access to the surface in case of an emergency. You're in an underground system, so you cannot, if you have an equipment malfunction, surface directly. So you have to be trained for those emergency procedures.
So you would say that's a pretty dangerous environment for somebody to go in.
Absolutely, yeah. It requires technical training, different types of equipment from standard scuba diving, intense work in groups of people that you trust, and the guts to really do it.
Okay. So can you tell me about, have you had any scary moments while you were cave diving?
Sure. The one system, it's an underwater river, and you have to understand water movement when it moves real quickly is it causes erosion to the sea, the coastlines. And for instance, big storms, hurricanes, causes erosion. So water movement in large capacity is very challenging to negotiate. For example, the cave system that I was entering for one of the first dives I did after my training dives, the water motion was very heavy, and my mask blew off. Okay, so when you're underwater, our human eyes are not naturally acclimated to be able to see in water. I mean, you can visually see outlines and figures, but you can't see as clearly as you can with a mask on.
Right.
So obviously one of the equipment adjustments that we make in cave diving is we carry a second mask with us in case something like that does happen. So we're entering the cave system, my mask blows off, and I've not been in this type of environment too often, so it was was challenging for me. My heart raced considerably.
So that's pretty amazing that you were able to deal with that type of situation, because I know for myself that would cause me to absolutely panic.
Right.
And I think the whole idea of cave diving, you have to be very brave. I mean, I would say, to be able to do.
Well, one of the things in reference to bravery, I don't know, bravery, yes, possibly. Trained, more importantly, I think. And that's where it comes into being a confident diver, first of all, before you take the training. And you don't just jump into that from, doing a couple ocean dives. I have thousands of ocean dives logged, okay? I've trained hundreds of other people to dive, so I have a lot of experience in emergency situations. And that you always fall back on your training. So we train with comfort through repetition. So when we're doing these training exercises, we learn to respond from our training that is, stored in our memory, from an automatic response. So when situations like that happen, you know exactly what to do most of the time. There's always something out of the ordinary that you have to be prepared for, but we learn to teach ourselves to stay calm, don't panic, breathe, stay focused on what's going on around you. Stay in the moment.
So I'm just kind of thinking, what is it like underneath the water? I mean, what does it look like?
Sure. It's like nothing. It's something that most people never get the opportunity to experience. When you have caverns and cave systems, they're rock, sediment, have been there for years. And some of the sediment is unique to the environment, obviously. What actually keeps the cave from collapsing from the weight of the rock is the water. So the water actually holds the cave system together from collapsing. Now there are periodic breaks in the cave system they're called sinkholes. They do happen, which actually become other entry or exit points of the cave system in this underwater river. Okay. The rock it depends on where you're at and what part of the country. You can dive the caves in Florida, but if you dive caves in, let's say, the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, these were formerly dry caves. And these cave systems were dry, they weren't flooded, so they had the natural process of stalactites and stalagmites forming, okay, from the ceiling and on the floor, the little like cone-shaped things that hang. And now, as water levels have risen, they've actually flooded. Okay, so you can actually dive those now, where people used to may have walked in them years ago, and so now they're underwater in the seawater.
So, where would you say has been the most memorable place that you have dived?
I would say a place called Jenny Springs, which is in Florida. It's a natural spring, so it's spring water coming out from underground into the river, the Suwannee River. Ultimately, it's very clear. It's crystal clear water. The water temperature is really cool. The challenge of it is when you're entering the cave system, as you're coming in from the river point, so you're entering into an opening that has been there for however long, and the water is flowing out at rapid speeds. So you're actually pulling yourself into the system, okay, kicking, pulling, however you got to get into it, and so it's very challenging as far as physically challenging, and when you're exerting your physical being, your respiration increases, which you have to be concerned with in diving because of how much air you consume, okay, and because of air consumption, because if you run out of air in a cave, you cannot go to the surface. So you have to plan all this stuff in your diving. So while you're doing all that, the most memorable event is going into this rapid moving water and really stressing to get in it, and then turning around and coming back out. But when you come back out, it's like you're being pushed, and so you're just floating, and you don't have to kick, and you can relax and just enjoy everything, and you're moving. It's almost like a roller coaster. It's very exciting.
So, you kind of just spoke a little bit about your physical shape. I would assume that comes into play when you're preparing to go diving.
Absolutely.
Is that something you're concerned with?
Yeah, absolutely. You need to be physically fit, of decent physical condition. It does require training. Obviously, Cardiovascular fitness is important. You know, not smoking is important. Proper diet, sleep, and all those things are important when you're diving, because these are stressors to the body that are not natural. See, when you go into an environment that's not natural for a human to be in, it causes stress, and so you must prepare yourself in advance for that.
And is diving, to me, it seems like it would be kind of an expensive hobby as well.
Absolutely, it can be. Specialty diving, like cave diving, the equipment is rather pricey, but you have to weigh those decisions that you make in purchasing the equipment on the importance of the equipment to your safety. Number one, safety comes first in diving. So, you know, you have to understand that there is no natural sunlight coming into the water. So we use artificial lights that are waterproof and are very powerful, so that when these lights illuminate the rooms and the caves and the caverns that we're in, it's very majestic in its own way, because no natural light ever sees those places. And so your equipment there and the lights, your tanks and your oxygen cylinders, because we use multiple tanks when we dive these types of places, because you're in there maybe an hour, 2 hours at a time. Your suit, your outer exposure suit, is a dry suit, so you can dive in cold temperatures for extended periods of time without encountering hypothermia, which is lowering the body temperature, obviously the core body temperature. Water absorbs heat from the body 25 times faster than air. That's why when children play in pools, even in the summertime, they get extremely cold by the end of the day, being in there 6 hours, even though it's 90 degrees out and the water temperature is 80. Because even though they're in the water, their body temperature is lowering.
So it is a fairly expensive hobby, but it's something that you love to do, and those things are necessary,
right,
for you to be able to do those safely.
Absolutely. And so you weigh the cost, and it's obviously it's worth it to me.
When was the last time you were able to go diving?
It's been a little over a year. I mean, it's not a seasonal sport, because the suits and the equipment that we use, and the suits and the exposure suits, you can dive all year round in it. But it's been a little time. Yeah, I'm ready. I'm eager to go back.
Yeah. So have you ever, I know that people do dive, like even in the rivers and stuff around here.
Sure.
Have you ever done anything like that?
Absolutely. We've trained firefighters and other rescue dive teams around this area to do limited visibility type diving, because the Ohio River is a limit. It's, you know, very difficult to see underwater in that. And it's similar to the types of training that we use in cave diving.
Do you think that you have a type of like spiritual experience? Because that's what I would think being underwater like that would be like.
Absolutely. For me, it's one of those places where you stay completely in the moment. You're not concerned about what bills need to be paid. Am I getting the kids picked up on time? And all these things in life that that are important, but concern us in our mind. That all shuts off, and you focus on what's at hand and right in front of you, so you're able to really experience and enjoy it in a special way. I think I find the most peace when I'm underwater, breathing and in an environment that I'm literally not supposed to be in, okay? And I find peace and happiness and some joy in it.
Have you ever ran out of air when you were diving?
Yes, it's happened.
That would be like my biggest fear.
Yeah, it has happened. I was on a dive trip in Mexico. It was a night dive in Cozumel, Mexico. So it's not a cave dive, it's an ocean dive. And the seas were real rough that evening. And when you're diving on a boat, they have a dive master or a deckhand that when you normally do 2 dives in an evening to keep from decompression sickness. So you dive your deepest dive first, and then you do a shallow dive. So we dove our deepest dive first, and I seen several sharks, large parrotfish, grouper, octopus.